Hi, I'm Anthony Benitez. Welcome to another episode of Good News, Good Life, where we teach on Jesus, His finished work at the cross, and the transformative results that follow to your daily and practical life. Today, we are going to be teaching on spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts. Now, spiritual gifts can be found, the topic of spiritual gifts. It can be found in the epistle written by St. Paul, the Apostle of Grace, to the church at Corinth. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 1. The Bible says, "Now concerning spiritual gifts, I would not have you ignorant, brethren." Firstly, we must understand the foundation of spiritual gifts. What is the foundation of spiritual gifts? Well, first off, the word spiritual gifts, or the words spiritual gifts, is actually just one word found in the Greek. Greek, if you did not know, was the original language that the New Testament was written. Old Testament, Hebrew; New Testament, Greek. So the Greek for the phrase spiritual gifts is actually simply just one word. It is charismata. Charismata. Charis, if you did not know, it's a beautiful word. The word charis in the Greek quite literally means grace. Charis means grace. So these spiritual gifts, the foundation is that these gifts are grace gifts. Grace gifts. What is grace? Wonderful question. Romans chapter 4, verse 4 says this, "And to him working, the reward is not considered according to grace, but according to debt." To him who works, the Bible says, the reward is not considered grace. Why? Because he's working. But it is considered debt. I'll give you a very simple and clear example. If you put in your 40 hours at work, at the end of the work week of those 2 weeks, let's say you go to your boss, he gives you a paycheck, and he tells you this is grace. You look at your paycheck, and it's whether it's 40 hours or 80 hours within 2 weeks, there's nothing extra to it. It's simply the hours you've been working. It's not grace. Would you tell your boss this is not grace? Of course, because you were working and you deserve the earnings which you have just received, whether it's 40 hours, 80 hours, whatever it is. But if someone just gives you a gift without having to work for it, the Bible says, Romans chapter 4, verse 4, that is grace. Romans chapter 11, verse 6 says this, "If it's by grace, it's no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace." I love that verse. Romans chapter 11, verse 6 says, "If it's by grace, bless God, it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace." Romans chapter 4, verse 4, which we just read, clearly states, if the reward to him who is working, the reward is not considered grace, but debt. So we see very, very clearly that grace and works are the complete opposite. Grace and works are the complete opposite. I would highly encourage you to write down Romans chapter 11, verse 6. Once more, if it's by grace, it's no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. Very simple. So with that understanding, these grace gifts come to you by not working, by not trying to merit them. That is called works. And the Greek does not say work gifts, merit gifts, fasting gifts. It does not say that. It does, however, clearly declare these gifts, these spiritual gifts, are grace gifts. So I want to debunk this religious construct that is false and in grievous error. These spiritual gifts do not come to you by your fasting. They do not come to you by your good behavior, your so-called holiness, your moral behavior. Now, am I against morality? Of course not. If you know me personally, you know I am a very huge believer in dignity, integrity, and some people will call it morality. But we do not mix these works and merits with the grace gifts. These gifts are simply grace gifts. These spiritual gifts, which are listed in the same chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, these spiritual gifts are grace gifts. Very simple. That is my point for today. If you and I can really comprehend and grasp this beautiful truth that these spiritual gifts are grace gifts, they do not come to you because you behave well enough. They do not come to you because you fast long enough. They do not come to you because you have cut out specific things in your life. No. Now, these grace gifts are to be received how? By simple faith. In Christianity, we must understand this beautiful truth. Romans, which is the Magna Carta for Christianity, boldly declares, therefore, and I'm quoting the Bible now, therefore, it is of grace that it might be by faith, that the inheritance might be effective to all the seed. What does that mean? That means our inheritance, which does include the spiritual gifts, our inheritance is to be received by grace through faith. So if you and I do not receive these grace gifts by fasting long enough, praying long enough, by behaving well enough, then how do we receive these spiritual gifts? The answer is very simply put. We receive it by faith. Everything in the New Testament is unbelief or faith. The word of faith which we preach is this: everything is to be received by grace through faith. These spiritual gifts are to be received without working for them, by simple faith. Just like salvation, just like every single thing in Christianity, grace and faith. Now, I do want to elaborate on one specific spiritual gift. One specific spiritual gift that the Bible talks about, that actually St. Paul, the apostle of grace, says that every believer should covet, which is another word for desire. This one specific spiritual gift that St. Paul, the apostle of grace, declares for all of us as believers to desire is the gift of prophecy. The gift of prophecy. In the New Testament, something has obviously changed. A very brief but very, very impactful truth is this. In the Old Testament, there was a law that a rebellious son must be stoned to death. That's Old Testament. Then Jesus comes on the scene and talks about this famous parable of the prodigal son. The prodigal son is a rebellious son. The prodigal son is a rebellious son. He does come home. Question: did Jesus, the Son of the living God, declare we are to stone the prodigal son? No. In fact, when the prodigal son returned, he received much more reward than what he had in the first place. That's called grace. Old Testament, a rebellious son, according to Deuteronomy, must be stoned to death. New Testament, Jesus, Jesus taught about this rebellious son that did return, but received more rewards and grace, and did not get stoned to death. Beautiful. So something has obviously changed. Same thing goes with the gift of prophecy. In the Old Testament, the prophets do predict the future. The Old Testament, which we are not under. The Old Testament, it's called old for a reason. For example, if you move on from 9th grade to 10th grade in high school, and your 9th grade teacher is an old teacher you have, do you still go to the classroom? No, it's an old class, an old grade, an old teacher. You have a new teacher, which you listen to. So the Old Covenant, the Old Testament, the prophets predict the future. The prophets expose sin. Friend, that is Old Testament. What is the definition of prophecy in the New Testament? Well, I don't know, Anthony, if we have to look it up through various books. No. I'm a fanatic for the Bible. I said I am a fanatic for the Bible. The Bible, the Holy Bible, canonized, declares in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, now the person who prophesies speaks to people and builds them up, encourages them, and comforts them. You would think the Bible says the one who prophesies predicts the future. The one who prophesies exposes people of their sin. Does it say that? 1 Corinthians 14, verse 3. What does it say? It says this. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 3 boldly declares, the person who prophesies speaks to people for their upbringing, encouragement, and consolation. Where does it say prediction? Where does it say exposing folks of their sin? Nowhere, except in demonic, religious blasphemy. Yes. So the Bible is pure enough to define the truth. And the Bible declares the gift of prophecy is a person who speaks to folks to encourage them, to comfort them, and to build them up, not down. That's the gift of prophecy. Why do you think St. Paul, the apostle of grace, declared that he wants everyone to have the gift of prophecy? Does he want everybody predicting the future? No, that's a zoo, a menagerie. But he does want every single believer to encourage each other, to comfort each other, to console each other. That's beautiful. That's New Testament, friend. So I want to end it here. But if you did like what you have heard today, we have a podcast with well over 200 episodes that will help you with any challenge you have in your daily life. You can click on the link above. It'll take you to that platform. And I furthermore actually did a whole series on spiritual gifts. I know this will bless you. So once again, my name is Anthony Benitez. Thank you for watching.